All right. Well, hey, folks, we have Kasper Hammer here on the podcast today. There he is, phoning in or videoing in from Denmark. We're very happy that you've joined us, even though it's so late for you. Thanks for the accommodation, and we're looking forward to getting to know you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure being here, and I know it's a bit late here in Denmark, but that just gave me an excuse to be up all night playing video games until our recording session.
Well, we're glad we helped with the video game hobby. Perfect. Excellent. Well, Kasper, let's start off by tell us what you do.
So, that's that's always a, I'll try to keep the answer short, but I work within the wind industry, but in a supporting role, sort of within training. So I do have a background as an instructor, but recently I've moved into more supporting instructors getting, where they need to be able to teach the various wind trainings, especially within the Global Wind Organization or GWO trainings. And then I help with designing training solutions for the wind industry.
Oh, fantastic. So, from training technicians to training instructors in the wind
Yes.
industry. And how long have you been doing this?
So I've been within the wind industry since 2019. In some regards, it feels like I've only just entered the industry, but 2019 is already 7 years ago. So yeah, I've been doing this for quite some time. It sneaks up on you, but
It sure does.
I joined the wind. I joined Siemens Gamesa, um, their training center in Denmark back in 2019. So the quick listener will then hear that I actually joined the industry as an instructor without previous experience as a tech first. So that was a bit of a steep learning curve to get into the industry, but luckily I think I found my right fit within the industry.
Oh, perfect. That is a steep learning curve, but some people are just suited for training and being an instructor. So, it sounds like it suited you and you know where you belong.
Yeah, I think so. I did have a few years in the Danish army before joining. It sounds like not uncommon with some of your previous guests here that you, you start off in either law enforcement or military and then you join the wind industry. But I was an instructor in the Danish army before I joined the wind industry. And I used to joke that, I did exactly the same standing in front of a whiteboard, except I would be in a uniform, and luckily you can't see me from, my chest down, but I definitely have more of a gut now than I did back in my military days.
Nope, that makes sense. Well, that's fantastic. And yes, we have a whole lot of former military, both in the company and on the podcast. So, tell me, what were you in training in the military, and what are you training now, specifically some of the classes?
So, you know how most young men, when they join the army, they like to shoot guns and blow stuff up. But I was a bit more of a nerd. I like the communications, the radio, etc. So when the other guys were talking about, the new exciting rifles, I was talking about the exciting new antennas for our vehicles and our radios. So I sort of by that um, passion, I drifted into communication. And I was teaching, well, it sounds really fluffy, but I was teaching people how to teach people about radios by the end of it. So it was, it was quite a comfortable army job for the last few years. I definitely think, people would when you say you're a soldier, everyone just imagines, that you're out in the mud climbing around, fighting imaginary bad guys in the forests and and stuff like that. But by I was it was a nice job. I really enjoyed it. It was really technical, but of course very different from wind turbines. But at the same time, you had to know about all the different the bandwidth, etc. That your radios could do. And then in 2019, I had a bit of a epiphany. I thought I'd always thought that I would grow old in the military, but without going too into details, basically every fourth year in the Danish military, the politicians, etc., has to decide, what way are we going, what's the strategy, etc. And they decided that they wanted to decentralize the job I was doing. So I was back in the mud again. So I was standing out in the rain one day, thinking there must be an easier way to make money than this. So I decided to try my luck with the wind industry, and then and just stop me if I'm talking too much.
No, please
That's
continue.
the issue with being an instructor is I love the sound of my own voice, so I'll just talk for an hour now. No, I
Uh, Podcast hosts have the same problem.
yeah, that's good. No, so not to sound too much like a nepo baby, but my dad worked for Siemens Gamesa as an instructor, and he said, we have an open position. Why don't you try and phone my manager and hear about the position? And I know this is easy to claim now, but I phoned this manager. I made up some bogus excuse why I needed to talk with him, and then I phoned him up, and I didn't mention my surname because I thought I didn't want him to straight away know that I was my father's son, so I could at least claim I had a small hand in getting the job myself instead of just being, my dad landing me the job. But we spoke for half an hour, and he asked like, "What was your name again?" And I kind of had to fess up that, my surname is Hammer, and then, well, wait a minute, and he realized my dad was working there. But that was mega fun having your dad as a coworker. So we did
Oh
that
my
for
goodness.
a few years at Siemens Gamesa.
And was your dad an instructor also?
He was, yes. I He's been in the game for a long time, so he's also been teaching a lot of instructors how to do the GWO trainings, mainly the technical trainings, and he also taught me my train the trainer. So I spent my first few months with him learning how to become a BTT instructor, and then I was teaching on. And it's kind of funny because I never really knew much about, you don't know what your family actually does when they go to work usually. And I found out that my dad was kind of a rock star in the wind world, almost annoyingly so, when you meet new people and you're like, "Oh, you're Henrik Hammer's son." I'm like, "Yes, I am." But that was but really, really a great experience working with him. I'll always cherish that.
That sounds exciting. I mean, I would have loved that. That sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah, it
Boy,
was
get
it
to
was
work
quite
with your
fun.
dad. Very cool. And get trained by your dad.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's also some pressure there because you don't want to. One thing is disappointing a coworker. That's not fun either. But if it's both a coworker and your dad, that kind of doubles things. But it was no, it was really really good.
Was he harder on you than the other students?
I would like to claim that he was, but I don't think he was.
No.
He was actually like, of course, again, this is easy to say afterwards, but we had some classes together where I was the instructor and he was sitting in the class, making sure I was ready to perform the training on my own. And we asked the students after the week was done, like, if any of them were aware that we were actually father and son, and they said they weren't aware. So at least I feel like it didn't show too obviously. There were some quick, like smart students who note like our body language and our tone of voice are really really similar. But other than that, it was. I like to think that we weren't too obvious about it. But of course, you always think that you're being sly.
I love that you got to work with your dad. That's a great story. And
Yeah,
I'm also loving hearing that you wanted to carve your own path, right? You
yeah,
started off by not giving your surname, have the conversation, earn it on your own, and then even try and be sneaky when you're in the same room that people
yeah.
don't know
Exactly.
it's
Like it
father
wasn't like
son.
I would be. calling him dad or something in front of the in front of the participants.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do for the children, right? To carve your own path and not get stuck in the shadow or, and some people thinking you might be there because of a parent and, the heck with them, right? We got to carve our own path and live our own career. And I think that's really mature that you recognize that and did it on your own because we've seen that right before. You've probably seen children of
Yeah,
parents and they get into a spot and you go, how did you get there?
exactly. And I like to like I think we were okay with it because he wasn't in a manager position. It wasn't like I reported to him. I know that of course he was the one who taught me to be an instructor, and someone could reasonably say, well, if it's his dad signing him off, would he have failed him? But it's not like, I went in and had salary discussions, etc., with my dad. So because I mean, I of course talked with him before I applied, and I didn't want to move into his turf if he was uncomfortable with it. But because we didn't like, I wasn't reporting to him, we would be equals sort of
Mm-hmm.
when I was working there. So yeah, no, that was really great. And I think the work at Siemens Gamesa really helped me find my passion for wind. So you made a comment before we started recording about my all my wind turbines in the background. I like to joke that when you're a soldier, that's your whole identity. So when I had to leave the military, I had to find a new identity because I basically had none except being Casper the soldier. So I decided now wind turbines are my whole identity. So so and I think working for an OEM really helped um, with that because you just have the technology available at hand. It was really great, like getting the training, talking about how do you do gearbox inspections, and then be like, I'm not really getting the topic, and you can be like, well, then let's go to a real nacelle and check it out, instead of just looking at PowerPoints, etc. And to be fair, Siemens Gamesa had a program where, because I wasn't a tech, I had to go out and do some service with techs beforehand. So,
Okay.
I at least I cannot claim to be an experienced tech at all, but at least you know what it feels like to climb a tower and go into the hub and spin, etc. When you talk with your students.
Well, that's good. Everybody's got to get in that hub. I agree.
Yeah,
That's a rite of passage. And I love your collection. I have a small
like
little collection myself. I try and keep around. Um, what now, yes, you were going to say Siemens Gamesa. So I was at GE for a lot of years. So I can relate to what you're saying. It's lucky, we're lucky to have spent some time at an OEM where, yes, the technology is there and you can go look at it and touch it and work on it. I even did 3 years in the manufacturing facility. And oh my goodness, did I learn so much, right? Because we were putting everything together. And the knowledge and education was, yeah, I think second to none when you want to know holistically what's going on with all the components.
exactly, and I also think we trained subcontractors and clients as well, of course, but a lot of the trainings was our own techs. So it was, we were all in it together. And it was easier to, if you had new guys coming in, you could show them some of the manuals, etc. You didn't have to worry about, can I show this because of, company secrets, etc. You could be like, okay, this guy really, like, he really wants to learn more, so we can go above and beyond the curriculum and let's find a manual, let's look at a service manual, etc. I don't know if you've ever done the GWO basic technical training, but
No,
it's
not me.
no, but it's like the name implies, it's really basic. So, it was fun sometimes being able to go above and beyond that instead of it just being, here's a picture of a gearbox. Like, one of the learning outcomes is be able to recognize the function of a gearbox. And you could argue that's just talking about, it increases the RPMs. Yeah, you're good to go. But being able to go out and like, oh, let's actually look at a gearbox. Let's look at the manuals, etc. You could give them, a better experience.
To get the drawings and start to identify gears and ratio placement, bearings, all the pieces, right?
Exactly.
And yet, and you don't get that in GWO, is what you're saying. So I don't actually, I've never taken that class.
So I think it's a great class for what it is, or a great course for what it is, which is very much like an introduction course to the industry. I like to tell people, which is again, it's just my way of looking at it. It's basically getting you in the door. It's not teaching you to be a wind tech. Like you can't get that done in 5 days, but it's what allows you to then go and learn how to become one. And frankly, what I enjoy about that training is it's like 90% new guys. So you get someone who's really, really interested. They're joining a new industry. You're maybe the first one who's actually meeting them, talking about the wind turbines that they're going out to be working on. And they're just, sucking it in because they want to learn. Like I'm not going to claim that, of course, some people, no matter what training it is, they're going to hate it. They don't want to sit in a classroom. They want to be out and working. And you would get like some odd times you would get someone who had been in the industry for 30 years, but he just never did the cert. So someone was like, "Oh, you have to go listen to Kasper now." So the guy would know much more than I do about wind turbines, and I had to teach them like, "This is a rotor," and he'd be like, "I know that," but I mean, I really enjoyed that. It was very much a welcome to the wind industry training.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, Altair Energy Services, and their highly trained, expert technical staff, leveraging decades of renewable power management experience into customized solutions for everyone to meet their energy goals and contribute to a better future for all. Altair's team of hardworking, respected experts are providing full-scope, turnkey repairs, planned and unplanned maintenance, system upgrades, fully autonomous technical crews, supplemental staffing, and customized dynamic scheduling to fit your power production needs. Contact Altair at info@altairenergyservices.com and learn more about their wide range of capabilities across multiple power technologies and platforms. Okay. So what are some of I think I'm hearing that you get a sense of excitement from the new to the wind industry students. What are some of the things that they're excited about and why they're there?
Well, I think, there's learning, first of all, demystifying it a bit. You look at these giant machines and it just looks daunting to ever think, I'm going to climb up there and actually be able to do service. And being able to say, well, have you ever opened up your car and looked at the gearbox inside of your car? That's basically what we have up there, just much bigger. If you can do an oil change in your car, you can probably do an oil change in a wind turbine. Again, I'm exaggerating, but
Sure.
also some of the theory behind it. When you take, and I mean no disrespect here, but some people who've been, they've been bricklayers or something, or mine workers their entire life, and now they've had to like almost being forced into a new industry. It can be a bit scary if someone tells you, well, today we're going to be talking about Ohm's law and math and stuff. They're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. And then you're able to like show them it's not that scary if we just tie it up to what we're actually going to be working with. So I like seeing that. And then just some of them are, I think, impressed with how much work goes into building a wind turbine, both
Mhm.
onshore and offshore, especially offshore, with the whole thing where it just takes longer because you're out in such a hostile environment. Um, that's a bit of a like a positive wake up experience for a lot of them.
I love this comment about demystifying the wind turbine. You're right. I don't see them anymore. I've been doing it too long, as mystical as others, but that makes sense, right? You're going to break down the components and how they're structured, their function, and how they're built. And then, you talked about Ohm's law. So now you're getting into, you do some theory of electrical. Do you do theory of mechanical as well and hydraulic? Are you touching all
Yeah,
those areas?
yeah. So the GWO BTT training has a mechanical component, electrical, hydraulic, and then there's a bolt tightening and an installation module as well. I think the mechanical, even though the name is mechanical, it's much more of an introduction to the turbine itself. Like you literally start from the bottom, like this is the foundation, this is the tower
Mm,
section, this is the nacelle on top, and then you talk about all these different things. So not, I mean, they are theory heavy. It's probably more than half the training that's theory. Electrical and hydraulic goes a bit more in depth. You also talk about Pascal's law in the hydraulic session. And then the bolt tightening one, probably one of my favorites because you're almost the entire day in the workshop, tightening bolts with the big hydraulic torque wrenches and tensioners, etc.
hmm Okay, makes sense. And that basic training, you're learning the theory, you're learning the components. You said demystifying it, right? And but it gives that person, removes some of the fear of the unknown. Um, I think it's perfect. It's almost like you think about the outlet in your house and the kid don't touch it. But when they grow up, you can explain why and they understand, or maybe the stove's hot, right? Don't touch
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
then later on, you can teach why. And all of a sudden, it's not scary. You don't have the fear and you get to go use that piece of equipment, go climb that wind turbine. So I understand it. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a cliche. And if by any chance any of my old students are listening to this, they're going to be groaning because I say this so many times during the training. But it's a bit like in the military when you first hand out a rifle to the new recruits. You tell them you can never fear this because then you make mistakes, but you have to respect it because if you don't, you also make respect. It's the same with the wind turbines. Even just climbing up there, working there. The second you start being afraid of what you're doing, you also start losing focus, and then you start, making mistakes. But on the other hand, you also like if you're too casual about it, if you don't respect it, you also have the potential for making a mistake. I believe
Makes
was it Marcus a few days ago who made the comparison, about driving a car, how you get complacent when you're driving your car and you're suddenly like, I have no idea where I am. And it was so interesting listening to that episode because even though we're from two completely different countries, like that example is such a great example of when you switch your brain off and go to autopilot, 9 out of 10 times you still get there, but that one time you don't, it could potentially be catastrophic. So that was a really good example.
Yeah, no, that's me sharing one of the bad habits I have. Talk on the phone while driving and then I
Yeah,
don't know how I got to my location. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It can be scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, especially the older I get because I really don't remember. And I'm
I
yeah,
mean,
scared.
I have an hour and 15 minutes to work, and it's the same road I've been driving for the past 5 years. And I can sometimes, you suddenly you clock back in and you're like, I actually don't know where I am until you hit a landmark. Oh, there's that bridge. Now I know where I am. But you're like, did I pass that already? Like how far am I? It is really scary to see how you can still be functioning, but you're actually like you're not there.
Right. Okay, so what did you say that you said in class? You can't fear it, but you must respect it. Is that how you said
Yeah.
that?
Yes, yes. It might be a bit of a direct translation from Danish, but basically, yeah, you can't fear this, but you have to respect it because
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, it can go wrong.
This makes perfect sense in English too.
Great.
Um, yeah, so yeah. But how many students are we talking about? How many students have you had over the years in wind?
That is so you can have 8 students in a BTT, and to be fair, it's yeah, almost 4 years ago since I had like regular classes, but I would guess a little over 100, people maybe coming through, because sometimes you would have the same people for longer periods. They would join the basic one first, and then you did some more advanced stuff with the same group of guys before you let them go. But
Hmm
yeah, it's been It's funny to think back on because it doesn't seem like much in the moment, but it's probably somewhere between, if not a few hundreds actually, because if you have 8 every time and you run trainings almost every week for a few years, that quickly adds up.
That's a lot of students. That's a lot
Yeah,
of students, right? And now you have instructors that are being taught to go out and teach more. That's a lot of people.
yeah,
Uh,
and segueing into some of the stuff I promised I would be I would be talking about. A few years ago, I well, actually, back in 2021, I joined Maersk Training. So I really enjoyed working at Siemens Gamesa, but having had a bit more responsibility and a bit of a leadership responsibility in the army, I was sort of missing something. I really enjoyed being an instructor, but I wanted to be something more, if that makes sense. And
mhm.
then Maersk Training was looking for a project manager, and I applied for the job there and got that. And that was in a team that did consultancy work in the sense that if someone wanted to start a new GWO center, we came out and helped them with that. So I've actually
Okay.
been in the US quite a lot, but up in Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, so up northeast, where
Hmm.
we helped community colleges that wanted to start a wind program, and we came in and helped them get that set up. Some of them smaller scale, like Rowan College in South Jersey. I think they had a brilliant idea about not wanting to become a training provider, but wanting to be able to give their students, some of the certifications. If they ran the wind turbine technician program, why not integrate some of the GWO stuff? So they did that. But some of them also became like massive training providers with um, state-of-the-art training center, etc. So I spent quite a few years there. That was really, really exciting time, but also busy. I think like 120 travel days a year. I had projects in the US and then a few in Japan. So it was, bless you.
Thank you.
So yeah, it was exciting getting to travel out, meet new people, help them set up their training center. And then basically, going from just having an empty plot of land to having a fully functioning training center, and then also training their staff to become GWO instructors.
How
So
long were
spent
you doing this? Consulting and helping build.
so that was from 2001 until, well, I sort of still do it. I've just changed. I don't work for Maersk Training anymore. Um, I changed to my current company, TS Tech, last year. And that was um it, I was so blessed to become a father in 2024, and that did,
Congratulations.
thank you. And having a small baby girl did not really work that well with traveling 120 days a year.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had to, as you sometimes do, I had to decide, where did I want to put my priorities, and I needed to be more at home. And I promise I'll get back to TS Tech and the exciting work that we do. But I think the road there through Merce Training is also an important road because that's what really got me into the training of instructors instead, which
Okay.
it's a completely different ball game because a if you look at a training standard, it's pretty like you have to teach XYZ. This is the level your participants need to be able to recognize the principles of a gearbox, that kind of thing. But when you teach instructors, they need to be taught above the curriculum because if you only teach them to the curriculum, they won't be able to answer any questions outside of the curriculum. And at the same time, you don't just want a parrot, someone who can just repeat what you're saying. You want someone who can actually, if they explain how a gearbox works, they need to actually understand, how a gearbox works. And then the wind is really mature in the US, down in California and in Texas. Down south, you have, well, I don't need to tell you, you have a lot of wind
Lots.
turbines down there,
Yep.
but it's pretty new up northeast. So, and this kind of brings me into the whole, how do you find an experienced wind instructor when the industry is brand new? And the answer quite often is you don't. So you have to find someone who wants to be like a facilitator, who wants to be a teacher, but also has some sort of like either technical understanding or safety understanding. I think the
Yes.
safety part is easier to find, not because it's easier to do, but a lot of the safety trainings, you can use paramedics, firefighters, law enforcement, military. Like it's not that much of a jump for them to transition into. How do you teach working at height, fire awareness, first aid, all of that. But the technical side is sometimes a bit more difficult. But we usually manage to find, like, it could be a construction worker, an electrician, someone who already has a trade, but now wants to go into wind. So the job was not, you don't have to teach this person to be technical, but you had to, make them aware of the whole wind industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I
That
think
sounds like some rough headhunting to find those right people.
it is. I mean, even over here in Europe, wind is quite a mature industry, especially in Denmark, and Germany and the UK. It's been up and running for 20, 30 years. And even then, it's tough to find a technical instructor. But that can almost be the opposite problem, is that there's so many wind jobs that, if someone gets like, would you like to go out and work on wind turbines and make a lot of money, or would you rather get half of that to to teach other people? They're like, no way, I'm going out to work on the wind turbines.
Right.
Um, but no, it's been fantastic. The whole, like, you have to find someone and then, try to install that passion in them, because I genuinely think that instructors are a bit of a special breed of people, because you need to be passionate about what you're teaching. I'm not saying everyone is, of course, some people just clock in any industry, but I think, to be able to stand up there every day, every week, and in some degrees teach the same thing over and over again, and you have to be as passionate about it number 1,000 times you teach it as you were the first time. That just it takes a certain kind of person to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I don't think I could do it. This sounds like a little bit towards what you were saying about a day in the life of an instructor, and
Yes.
what that looks like, even
So I
behind the scenes. I think is yeah.
Yeah, because there's some really, really good things about um, the whole training industry. And then, of course, there are some, in my opinion, some drawbacks. Because, like I just said, you need to find these really special, passionate people to get them to teach. But then at the same time, you sort of have to restrict them. Like, if someone gave me a blank check and said, you can design a training center, and, like, there's no limit to the amount of money you can put into this, we would get a real wind turbine to train in, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But training, it's always a bit of a compromise between, how do we get the best quality of training without it going, too crazy. Uh, and then when you're an instructor, at least, yeah, I know it can differ a lot. I used to work, Merck Training is a huge training company worldwide. And then some people work in a training company where they're, an owner and three instructors. So of course it changes a lot depending on where you are. But for me, getting when I was an instructor, you got up in the morning, you came in, you prepared the classroom, all of that seems kind of like obvious stuff. But at the same time, you have to keep yourself up to date as well. It's a fast industry. So if you think, well, I learned this already, so I can check that box off, and then I never have to. to look into this as well, this again, then you will be overtaken by the industry. But
Mm.
there's even keeping like PowerPoints compliant up to date because they also get updated sometimes 2 times a year, but mostly once a year. All the GWO standards gets updated, and sometimes it's minor stuff like we changed one word to another, and sometimes it's pretty drastically changed, and that's usually the instructors managing that as well. And then I know you always think that what you do is a bit harder than what everyone else does. One thing that's for sure is that being an instructor is not the most physical demanding job. Like, but I like to say back when I was also I'm also a certified electrician. So back when I worked as an electrician, if you had a bad day, if you had been up all night, if you had been, in a fight with your wife or something, you could come in the morning, put some music in your ears, and then just, put your head down and work. But
Mm.
as an instructor, you're in front of paying clients from morning to evening every day. Like there's no bad days. If your baby kept you up all night, which I have a lot of experience with these days, then you still have to come in, show up in the morning and be like, hey guys, super excited about being here. So it's hard to switch off. And you might think, I need to clear my head for 10 minutes, so I'm going to give the guys, a smoke break or a coffee break. And then some well-meaning participants want to come up and chat with you because they're like, oh, that was super interesting. Can you tell me that again? And you're like, oh, I just need to stare into space for 10 minutes, but I guess we're talking instead. It's you're just engaged all day,
Hmm.
if that makes
I
sense.
absolutely, I understand what you're talking about. It's similar with other job types, right? When you start thinking about managers, right? Supervisors and managers specifically have to be in close communication, you know, not nonstop, but for the majority of their time each day versus maybe a director or something else doesn't, gets a little more of their own time. And you have to continue to deliver. But the way that you talk about it makes me picture Casper the soldier. Did the military help sort of prep you for that?
I definitely think it did. There's a lot of overlaps between the military and not just the wind industry. A lot, I think oil and gas would have the same. Obviously, hopefully, no one's shooting at you when you're out in the wind
Yes.
turbines. But being a bit dramatic, if you're prepping to go out on patrol or something in the military, you double check yourself and you double check your bodies to make sure that your equipment, your PPE, so to speak, is all there. Like you don't want to walk out and be like, "Oh, I forgot my ammunition." It's a bit the same in the wind industry. You don't want to start climbing that turbine before you're absolutely sure that your harness and everything is as it's supposed to be. And I think, in some regard, soldiers are just also used to being told, like, we have to do this a certain way. Why do we have to do it a certain way? You don't have to know that, just do it. Like, yes, sir. And then you just crack on. Because, I mean, I don't want to sit here and make light of any of the safety procedures, but sometimes I get why it can feel frustrating if you're the guy or the gal climbing up to the tower and you feel like why do we do all these procedures? Like why do we had a safety briefing when we showed up in the morning. We have a toolbox talk now, and we're talking again. Like I just want to work, but it's sort of just like that's the industry. We would rather that you're slightly annoyed that we have to do all this, and you make it home by the end of the day. And I think that's for me at least like the whole army experience of hurry up and wait can sometimes happen especially in the offshore environment as well
Mm-hmm.
for wind.
Makes sense. That's right. You got to keep going. But, back to what you were saying about the instructor has to continue to go, right? Whether you had a bad day, sleepless night, whatever it is, need a moment, you don't get it because your students, they need you, right?
Yeah.
In order for you to for them to be successful, you have to continually give yourself. So when you're training these new instructors, what are some of the tips and tricks and techniques that you give them so that they can be prepared for those kinds of days?
Yeah, no, that's a really really good question. I think it's all about getting them to understand, that they're a role model, and that comes with, drawbacks, but it also comes with a lot of upsides, of course. But then one of the drawbacks is, your students are always watching you. If you're the instructor and you're like, I'll just quickly go in here without my hard hat on, or something, the participant clocks that right away. So I use a lot of time talking with them about the fact that, they will be on the spot for, the entire duration of the day. And then of course it's a bit of a cop out, but we also try to recruit people who are, you know, willing to be that person. Of course you can't
Hmm.
always do that. And then it's also about trying to instill some sort of, pride in them for that, that fact as well. Because it's again, it's like kind of like in the military, where a lot of the stuff you do seems silly if you start not taking it seriously. Like if you're a US Marine and someone is like, I mean, you don't have to do what the drill sergeant says. You're like, I mean, the whole thing falls apart if we start thinking like that. And it's sort of the same in here, where they need to respect it in some way. And of course, I would love to be able to say what's the golden line to just make someone be like, yeah, now I respect this, and now I want to be this role model. But I don't think I can. But it's also important to note that these train the trainers that we do with them, like at some point I was 8 weeks in Philadelphia helping two guys become instructors. It's a lot of time together, like intense 8 weeks where they had to listen to this Danish guy talk to them every day. So it was you get like you have a lot of time with them to try and instill this way of thinking. That was a really long
I
speech
get
that
it.
I'm not entirely sure actually answered the question.
I think
Um,
you did. I think you did. But what I took away was um, they have to take it seriously. And so when I hear that, you have to be working with somebody that has the passion and drive and interest to be an instructor, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, they're going to say, I'm not listening to you, right? They don't have the
exactly.
interest, right? And then you start to prep them for what their life is going to look like as an instructor behind
Yeah.
the scenes, updating the documents. What can you improve to give more information so that the student, retains the information, and maybe it's more than visual and you get some hands on, and then be ready for those long days and those people staring at you and depending on you to
Yeah.
educate them. It's a tough, I get it.
So
So,
when I was an instructor, I was a technical instructor. So basically, there would be a bit of a friendly competition between the safety instructors and the technical guys, and
ah,
but basically we're the nerds and they're the jocks. So I would be like, no, we're much smarter than you guys, and they would be like, we're much cooler than you guys, and they sort of had a point. I hate to admit here on the air, but if you took all the GWO trainings and lined them up, like no one is rushing over to look at the electrical diagrams. They're all going to look at the firefighting equipment or the pool, etc. And the reason I'm saying this is just I was always a bit jealous of the safety instructors because they automatically, first of all, because of safety, they're multiple instructors, but they get people out. You climb on the ladders, you get to break barriers, etc. And in that environment, it's also a bit easier to instill in the participants. We have to take this serious because now you're hanging up there on the ladder, and if you don't take it serious, like you could fall down and injure yourself.
mm,
Whereas a technical instructor sometimes felt a bit lonely. You're standing there, you have eight guys who are almost falling asleep just looking at your electrical diagram up on the whiteboard, and you have to be like, again, you've probably done the same spiel a few hundred times now, and you have to try and make them passionate about the electrical diagram you're trying to show them. So that can be a challenge sometimes. I also think an important thing that I shouldn't gloss over is a instructor also sometimes have to be the bad guy, right? Well, no,
Mm.
that's wrong to say, but you have to be able to fail a participant as well. And so
Oh,
I think it's
sure.
wrong to say a bad guy because ultimately, it's about what I feel safe for, like even this person's own safety. If I said, sure, I'll pass you, and then send the person out, like you might fail someone, and for that person, that potentially means losing a job. But you have to look at it the way that like you're potentially saving that person from themselves. If you send
Hmm.
someone inexperienced into the field, would you be able to live with yourself if that person was injured? I
No, you don't want that. You don't
No,
want that, right?
exactly.
You have to
Yeah,
have the courage or integrity, some word like that, to let the student earn their own grade.
exactly.
What's Up Renewables is growing, and we're looking for new sponsors to join us. Our show connects leaders, innovators, and field professionals across the renewable industry, and our sponsors are part of that conversation. Some have seen their network expand instantly. Others have grown revenue and brand visibility through the connections they've made right here. If you want your company to reach the people driving the future of clean energy, now's the time to get involved. Contact us at media@whatsuprenewables.com to become a sponsor today.
The thing with this, training of new instructors and the whole consultancy service in getting people started, I also think, it's given a lot of insight in the training industry. Like we would all love to sit here and say training is not a business. It's just about helping people, to be safe. But of course, it's a business. And that's, like I said, that I think there's a few things that can be when you're looking from the outside. Sorry, if you're standing on the outside looking in, you sometimes think, like we spoke about earlier, why don't every training provider have their own wind turbine so you can actually work in a wind turbine? But that's because money talks in that industry as well. Of course it does, and it's a industry that's always a bit of an inconvenience because when you think about it, training is probably the only thing where we willingly stop business to do something else. Like you
Mm.
would make more money if you took your your 8 techs and just sent them out working. But you as a company make the decision to not get any money's worth out of them for a week because they need to be trained to stay safe. And that's of course a beautiful sentiment. But over time, as you started out, you just had to learn, someone would just tell you, don't kill yourself out here, let's go. Now suddenly, it's a week to do the training, and then someone came up with, we need to do refresher trainings. Okay, so it's a week again in 2 years. Now there's more advanced training keeps getting added on, and of course they get added on because the industry learns that we need these trainings. Like ultimately, it's we don't just toss training out there because it's fun. I know people like to joke that of course, the more courses you have to do, the more money the training providers make. But ultimately, it's the industry learning. We're not good enough here. We need some sort of training to close a gap here.
And
And
it always needs to improve, doesn't it? The
exactly.
training, right? It can't be the same thing all the time. Over time, it needs to get better and better. And what kind of misnomer or mistaken impressions do companies have when their students come out, or when the student comes out? Do they You're ready to go do a maintenance, or you can go do a repair instantly? Does it get exaggerated a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely think it does because if you look at the technical training, the GWO technical training, it actually says the learning outcome for the entire training is that you as a participant are able to join an experienced tech on the job, seeing, you're not supposed to be able to pick up a tensioner and then know how to tension a bolt, but you're at least, if the experienced tech says, when I want to use the tensioner, you're like, I know what that is. But some people are definitely like, why did I just send this guy on a week-long training if he comes back and he can't even do bolt tension? So, but that was never the intent. And I think, and again, it's my opinion that sometimes you look at things, you look on a piece of paper with some timings and say, what can we cut away here to make the training shorter? Like the first day training used to be 2 full days. Now it's a 1 day training. And I'm not saying that's, the wrong decision or the right decision, but you cut away a full day of training because someone was like, well, as you do the CPR, you can just teach the theory. And you're like, yeah, that sounds good in theory. And then there's the whole, um, like someone might say, well, if you know this is an issue, if you know you still need 2 days on a first day training, why don't you, Casper, just offer 2 days then? It would be
Hmm.
a better training, and maybe it would be a better training, but it would also be twice as expensive as every other training provider. So
Hmm.
it's these things where I think a lot of people they look at these certs almost like a, a given because they're mandatory. They sort of lost, like, you're not supposed to look at it as this is where I come in to get my cert. You're supposed to look at it as this is where I come in and learn first aid. I think that's a pretty big thing. Again, just what I see in the industry, that it's more about getting your certs in order than actually thinking, I'm going in for my bi-yearly checkup to see if I can still save a life. You know?
That's pretty good. So you
Yeah,
hear that you hear the terminology as I need to go get my cert or recert instead of I need to go
yeah,
back to training. You hear the terminology that way.
yeah, and you see a lot of
Oh.
recruiters as well, like looking for people with their GWOs. It's just like as soon as someone is like, I have my GWOs, you're like, right on, you're ready for the job. But I mean, there's no requirements to join a GWO course. Well, actually, I think the requirement is you need to be able to read and understand English is probably the only requirement. And then you can join the training, and that doesn't exactly make you a wind tech.
No. No.
No.
Okay. So take it more seriously, right? And show up
Yeah.
to the training, to the class with the outcome of learning, not just getting your cert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then if I can make a not so subtle plug into what
Yeah.
I do currently at TS Tech, we like I said, we design training solutions. And it was a bit of a, like, I don't mind admitting I was a bit hesitant going from being focused on people to being focused on the setup, etc. instead. But what we try to do is, like I said, everyone wants that turbine. Like, could you get a real nacelle in your training center? That would be amazing. But if the standard says, you just need a fuse box with a few contactors and relays and you're good to go, then, like, where is the the compromise, basically, where you still have quality and compliance? So that's what I try to figure out. Like, so many people before me, and I don't know if I'll be successful, but that's where we sort of operate in trying to be able to help people get, the GWO centers up and running with equipment and the competences that they need to do so. Yeah, so
And that's what TS Tech is doing. And that's where you're at today, helping
yes,
people
that's where
get.
I'm at today. So TS
Hmm.
Tech is actually it's an electrical engineering company where I'm such a niche part of it that I mean, I even think you would find TS Tech technicians working out in the field, not entirely sure what is Casper actually doing up in front of his laptop in the office. But I I think we try to take the field experience that we have and then funnel that into, trying to use our actual real experience from the field into our solutions. I like to joke, and this is like probably not true at all. But we're probably one of the biggest offshore companies that doesn't actually go offshore. I mean, we do have a few guys who goes offshore, but what we're really big on pre-assembly sites, etc.
What does that mean?
So, when we do a lot of the mobilization and demobilization, when someone goes in and need to make a quay site or a harbor site ready to build the wind turbines, we
Okay.
support the OEMs, etc., getting ready for their install. I mean, there's a lot of things. I didn't even know this when I joined TS Tech, that something as simple as if it's a Vestas system and you go to the US where it's a 60 hertz 110 volt system, and we have 230 volt 50 hertz in Europe. Like you have to somehow build like a small town that actually transforms it into something that works with all the European equipment. There's so much. There's all these small invisible things that I didn't even know about before I joined the company.
There's a lot to it. So is TS
It,
Tech also like I don't know, a I want to say a maritime kind of business because you're working on ports, or you're doing the design work and permitting and as they
so
build?
So we actually do have a maritime department as well, focusing on ships, etc. But
Okay.
our wind segment is more focused on, we stay on land, making the pre-assembly sites ready, and we do design some of our own power solutions, etc. I'm trying not to undersell it here, but again, I'm more I'm all in on my training solutions, but I
Yeah.
can hear my CCO Thomas swearing right now because I'm underselling his business. But
Yeah.
but no, we're pretty big on, again, it sounds super simple, like designing containers, but it's really, you know, a lot of people are looking, how can we make green energy even more green? Trying to figure out ways of, instead of having diesel generators, could you cut some of the generators away and then have battery banks? Could you do something with solar? Like trying to figure out, how do we optimize? How do we make it more green, and etc. That's a lot of the work that our brilliant wind department works on.
Okay. Well, thank you and fair. So is it CEO Thomas or whatever you said? My apologies. That wasn't, I got curious
No, no, I was
about
just
TS
kidding.
Tech. But
Yeah.
yeah, our conversation's training. We'll get
Yeah.
back on track.
No,
we'll,
no,
we'll get back on.
yeah, no, thank you. But yeah, I was brought in last year to look at, what could we do more on the training solutions. We actually started calling ourselves training equipment, because we're not a training provider. We help training providers. But
Yeah.
every time well, not every time, but most of the time I knock on someone's door and say, would you like to talk about a basic technical training simulator? They say, yes. Can you also teach me how to use it? And if the answer is no, but we can point you in a direction, people, it gets too muddy. So we sort of transitioned into, why don't we do the whole thing? Why don't we show up and say, like, here's the simulator that you need, here's the tools you need to use it, here's the course material, everything, and then get them signed off to do it, and then they run their own training business. Because
Very nice.
oh, sorry, I talked over you.
Oh, that's a, well, I mean, I'm just loving the whole story, right? You got into training and you did a few different places, but then training, helping others set up their training, and now you're helping training companies continue to grow and improve on their own programs. And you lost me in the beginning. So your training goes back to 2001?
No, sorry, 2019.
Oh, that's wind.
Yeah, that's wind. And then I joined the army in 2009.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
and then
Okay.
I spent probably half that time as a private, and then was promoted to sergeant and started the whole training side of things. I mean,
Got
again,
it.
it's scary how quickly time goes, but I think by summer this year I can say I've done training for a decade, which is it makes me sound super old, which I'm I'm a '90s kid, so I'm not that old.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
Uh,
Um, okay, no, I don't think I've met someone that's taken, the passion for training on such a career path, right? From actual instructing to helping build to training trainers and now, advanced training companies. It's quite
yeah,
an impressive career path, Kasper.
yeah, and honestly, I feel super lucky because I don't think like, it's definitely a niche market. If it's
Yeah.
hard to. I don't think many people do what we do, and I don't say that to make us sound special. It's just it's such a small market that there isn't a lot there. But I basically like something I realized having been a trainer. Again, you try to keep it as cheap to run a training center while you still have a high enough quality that you can actually teach people. But the job I get to do, I when you come in the early stages, that's when the sky's the limit. And like I mentioned, I help some American community colleges. I think I'll do a shout out to the National Offshore Wind Institute in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where the Bristol Community College got state funding and some private funding to build a training center. And just to be able to be part of, it's brand new, completely state of the art, where and I don't say that this as a dig against my former employer, Immerse Training, but I used to be in our training centers, which was a high quality, but we're starting to show 10, 15 years of wear. Of course, it doesn't look as shiny as it did when it was brand new. And then be able to, you come in on a project, everything is brand new. The instructors are completely passionate. The management is passionate. Everyone is just like, we're saving the planet. We're helping workforce development. It was all amazing. And then you sort of got to shake their hands and say, this was fun, and go on to the next project and do the same. So you didn't get to stick around for when it started to become daily life. You were
Mm,
always surrounded by people who were in this stage of this is amazing. We got our new equipment. We got all these new competences. And it rubs off on you that everyone around you is just mega happy and passionate about what they do and what you do. To be fair, you get to be part of it. I mentioned, I'm not going to say, out him too much, but one of the instructors at the NAUI, he wrote to me something, baseball isn't big in Denmark, but he talked about a coaching tree when, when a coach teaches a new coach and that coach then teaches a new coach. It's this guy's, coaching tree, and that got me thinking that, since my dad trained me, and now I trained this guy in New Bedford, and he trained someone, it was like, the branches on the coaching tree is actually, started to expand, and that was such an amazing way of like I was so blown away that he actually like he wrote that to me, that he just wanted to let me know that he had now taught his first guy to be a trainer. So my coaching tree had grown to include him, and that was like I don't want to sound too sentimental but
no,
that's why we do this, right? Like
yes,
that was
that,
amazing.
that's exactly why investing in those other people so that they can
Yeah,
continue their careers and affect others and help others. No, that's
exactly.
exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah, and I could probably talk all night about about this, but yeah, it's been a wild journey, and of course it's not over yet.
Nope.
I'm actually coming back to the US in a month's time to teach a train the trainer again. So it's good to be able to continue to make that tree grow.
Okay. Well, and I know we're kind of getting at the hour, but I want to ask a couple of questions. I'd ask you to give a couple pieces of advice. What's something you would piece of advice you would give someone that's considering becoming a trainer in the wind industry, and what's a piece of advice you might give to all of us that are still working and getting our training refreshers, year after year?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the last question. About the first, the annoying thing, the really instructor thing to say is that remember you only get as much out of the training as you put into it.
Should
Um,
have saw that coming.
because I'm not going to lie. If this is the fourth or fifth time you're doing the same refresher, of course at some point it gets mind numbingly boring. But the way I see it, it doesn't exactly improve if you're like if I'm doing something I find boring and I sit back and semi fall asleep, it doesn't exactly make the time go quicker. And at least I can say from the instructor perspective, we love someone who's willing to share experiences, etc. Like as long as it's done in good faith. And others in the class might not be as experienced as you. So if you are bored out of your mind, why not try to be like part of it? Try to share some of your wisdom. Like one of the best experiences as an instructor is basically when you trick the class into teaching itself. Like you're just like that. That's why we try to go away from the word instructor into facilitator because you're trying to facilitate learning. Really, that's you know, but yeah,
That's great.
yeah, it's a cliche, but you get as much out of it as you put into it. So try to stay awake for that refresher. And then, I mean, the reason they make you go to refreshers is because things change. So you might also learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
then for
you
oh, sorry.
I would just want to comment because you took the cliche and you gave a piece of advice, right? Offer to share what you know, I think is brilliant. Thank you.
No, thank you. And then for anyone wanting to be an instructor, I think there's a lot of people who will be thinking like, imposter syndrome. Am I good enough to become an instructor? And I mean, I can use myself as an example. I had exactly that thought when I, just as I was about to sign my contract back in the day with Siemens Gamesa, I was like, what am I doing? Like I might know how to teach people, and I might know something about radios, and I am a trained electrician, so of course I understand that part, but I know nothing about wind turbines. But then luckily the hiring manager at that time said, like, I would rather have someone who's really good at facilitating and then teach that person about wind turbines than I would have someone who knows everything about wind turbines but are not able to speak with people. And I'm not going to pretend that it's something that everyone can just do because I mean it's still, if it's safety, if it's technical, it's people's safety ultimately that you're in charge of. But I would say if you find it interesting, and then if you can find the right person to teach you, the trainer, etc., then go for it. And we've all been there with imposter syndrome. And
Mm.
something my dad told me when I was becoming an instructor, he said to me, of course, like don't misunderstand, we need to teach them the right thing. We need to teach them everything. But your students doesn't know what you don't teach them. So if you're a brand new instructor and you forget to mention something, they will never know that you forgot to mention it. Like they have no idea that they're supposed to learn it. And we laughed a bit about that because obviously like that should be taken with a grain of salt, but it kind of takes the pressure off that for those students, you are like the absolute authority figure in that room. And I know that might give some people performing anxiety, but it means no one is there to try and put you down. They're all there to learn from you. So I mean, I entered this, the training industry, and I haven't looked back. And that's of course that was really fluffy and some sentimental words. If you want a bit more like cold business advice, instructors are really well connected it's a great way to learn without, like, I don't want to say without doing the work, but if you're a tech that has to teach yourself while working, it might take longer because you're limited to what you see in front of you. Whereas an instructor, you teach the trainings, you meet people, all of your colleagues are the people who teach the trainings. You can pick up things here and there. And if you look at a lot of instructors, a lot of the technical instructors and safety instructors, they might progress into either a HACQ role or even like a middle manager or manager role. So it's not exactly bad on your resume either. Like if you have a hard time breaking into the industry, it's a great stepping stone as well. It can be hard to get into if you have zero experience, of course.
Hmm.
But a lot of like former instructors are pretty like they go into to some pretty well-paying and interesting positions afterwards. So it can also be a great career mover if that's more your thing.
Well, Casper, that was just a fantastic answer. You gave encouragement to the people that think they want to be an instructor and how to get through the anxiety pieces. And then you gave the real world advice on, do you want a career and grow? This is a great place to come
Exactly.
serve, come give us a service of duty for some period of time and then,
Yeah.
move on and take your career somewhere else. That's brilliant advice. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's brilliant advice. And yes, that's right. You don't know what's coming next, right? It doesn't have to be the last stop. Maybe it makes sense and maybe it makes sense that you go into, as you said, safety or HQ or management somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man, great advice. Thank you very much. I can tell you are like a born teacher. Every
Thank you.
question I asked was just, I mean, so thought through and explained. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you right now.
Thank you. And likewise, it's been I your podcast caught my eyes. I think probably a year ago because you had a I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about some of the first turbines being put up in California, how the Danish Vestas guy would hide beer in the containers for
Doug,
the
Doug Wickersham. Yeah.
yeah, and that was just such a great interview, and as a Dane, of course, a lot of people associate wind with Denmark. It's like Denmark is invented the wind industry, and I actually think especially the state of California has like a major part to play in that as well. Because yes, we made commercial wind turbines, but before California bought thousands of them, it was like
Mhm.
local farmers would buy one to get some cheap power, etc. But that's really what it proved two things that wind could actually become like a utility scale power plant, and it proved here in Denmark that the industry could actually be more than just building 20 turbines every year and to put up in a field here and there. And then it grew to be a massive industry. But it's funny how like as soon as you say I'm a Danish person and I work with wind, everyone is just like you must automatically be the expert. But I mean, I think we probably learned how to crawl, and then the US and I will also say the UK were the ones who learned how to run with it. So it's been a real pleasure getting to since I heard that last year. And it's unfortunate that it's actually down in my car, but I wanted to show off and put on my What's Up Renewable cap that I won in one of your LinkedIn competitions at some point. But I don't have it
Uh,
with me. It's down in my car.
I'm glad you won one of those. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's funny. So Doug Wickersham, that episode, that was good. And I hadn't really thought about, what changes would have occurred in the 80s in Denmark because of, all of those turbines starting to get shipped over to California, but it would have made an impact.
Yeah. And one of them
Yeah.
actually sits in the Siemens Gamesa training center in Brande, Denmark. One of them was bought back when they were decommissioned. So it
Ah,
sits in just in a cell on the ground, but it's in the training center, one of those original turbines that went to California back in the days.
very cool. Well, there's still quite a few of them right here.
Yeah. I hope to. I've never had the pleasure of visiting California, but I hope to get a chance one day. I remember we used to show this pretty old movie called Out of the Blue in the training. It's actually a fine, like 20 minutes long, small documentary about wind, and it shows a like a picture of something like 1,000, excuse me, 1,300 spinning turbines somewhere in California, and the speaker is like, you must really be a fan of wind turbines if you think this is pretty. And you know, it's I'm just thinking that it would still be mega cool to see um, the scale of it all, because back then, what were they, like 15 kilowatt turbines? It's crazy to think how many of them it took to like actually build a power plant. I'm rambling.
Yes.
It's a combination of being really, really fascinated by it and it being late. So I apologize.
No, that's all right. Yeah, we'll wrap it up. But we're actually we were gonna do a drive with Doug and get him to tell the story of the history that kind
Yeah,
of he went through, and we'll get some video footage. Maybe we'll work on that in the next couple of months and see if we can get something out there, and you can see those thousands of wind turbines lined
yeah,
up.
sounds
Yeah,
good.
it's very cool. Well, Casper, thank you so much for your time, letting us get to know you, and all of the advice that you've been giving for instructors and students in training. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's likewise. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that we get a chance to do this again sometime.